The stars had never seen anything like the Valoran Empire. For 300 years, their massive ships had swept across the galaxy like a dark tide, swallowing worlds whole. Every species they found had one thing in common. They all surrendered, supreme. Commander Thexvara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Dominator. The ship was 5 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that could crack planets. Around her, 3,000 other Valoran warships moved in perfect formation through the void of space. They were heading toward a small yellow star at the edge of what the locals called the Kepler sector. "Report," Thexvara commanded. Her voice was cold and sharp, like metal scraping against stone. "The star system has 9 planets," her intelligence officer replied. "The 3rd planet shows signs of advanced civilization. We detect multiple colonies throughout the system. Technology level appears primitive. Fusion drives, basic energy weapons, simple communications." Thexvara nodded. It was always the same story. The Valorans would arrive, demonstrate their power, and within days the new species would beg for mercy. Some lasted longer than others, but none had ever held out for more than a week. Why would they? Fighting the Valoran Empire was like trying to stop an ocean with a bucket. "What do they call themselves?" she asked. "Humans, Supreme Commander. They seem to be divided into multiple factions and governments. Our analysts believe this will make conquest even easier than usual." A thin smile crossed Thexvara's face. Divided species were the easiest to conquer. The Valorans would contact each faction separately, play them against each other, and watch them tear themselves apart, fighting over who got to surrender first. It had worked on the Kentari. It had worked on the Bravak. It would work on these humans too. Far ahead of the main fleet, Captain Kang Do-hyun was having the worst day of his life. His cargo ship, the New Busan, was loaded with mining equipment bound for the outer colonies. It was supposed to be a routine run, boring, safe, and profitable. Instead, he found himself staring at the largest fleet he had ever seen. The Valoran. Scout ships had appeared without warning at the Ganymede station. Kang had watched in horror as the alien vessels surrounded the mining platform. The station tried to send a distress signal, but the strange ships jammed all communications. Then, they had simply waited. "Captain," his navigator Yu Heejin said quietly, "should we try to help them?" Kang looked at his small crew. The New Busan was a cargo hauler, not a warship. It had about as much combat capability as a flying toolbox. "No," he said finally. "We need to warn Earth. If we stay here, we all die, and nobody learns what happened." It was the hardest decision he had ever made. Kang powered down all non-essential systems and used the asteroid field to mask his ship's heat signature. For 6 agonizing hours, they drifted like a dead rock while the alien scouts probed every corner of the system. Then the main fleet arrived. Kang had served in the Earth Defense Force for 12 years before becoming a merchant captain. He had seen the biggest human warships ever built. The entire Earth fleet could fit inside one of the alien vessels now filling his scanner screens. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "Dear God," Heejin whispered. The alien fleet moved with mechanical precision toward the inner system. As they passed Ganymede Station, one of their smaller ships fired a single beam of energy. The mining platform, which had housed 3,000 people, simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, as if it had never existed at all. Kang made his decision. Plot a course for Earth. Maximum. Burn. We leave now. The new Busan slipped away from the asteroid field and accelerated toward the inner system. Kang pushed his ship harder than he ever had before. The fusion drive screamed at redline temperatures, but he didn't care. Every minute counted now. As they fled toward Earth, Kang's communications officer picked up scattered transmissions from other colonies. The story was the same everywhere. Alien ships appeared, surrounded human installations, and waited. If anyone tried to fight or run, they were destroyed instantly. If they stayed quiet and waited, they were left alone for now. They're hurting us, Kang realized, keeping us trapped while their main force gets into position. The journey to Earth normally took 4 days. Kang made it in 2.5, burning through fuel reserves and pushing his engines past safe limits. When Earth's orbital defense platforms finally came into view, he nearly cried with relief. The defense platforms were humanity's pride. Massive orbital fortresses bristling with railguns and missile launchers. Each one could destroy a fleet of pirates or corporate raiders. Against what Kang had seen, they would last about 30 seconds. Earth Defense Command responded to his emergency transmission immediately. Within an hour, Kang found himself in a secure briefing room at Luna Base, facing a room full of admirals and generals. The most important military leaders in human space hung on his every word as he described the alien fleet. Admiral Park Jin-young, the head of Earth Defense Force, studied the scanner recordings from the new Busan. His face grew paler with each image. "How many ships did you count, Captain?" "At least 3,000 in the main fleet, sir. Probably more arriving behind them. And these weren't their full forces, just what they sent to one system." The room fell silent. Everyone did the math. Humanity had maybe 200 ships that could generously be called warships. Most were patrol vessels designed to chase smugglers and pirates. The largest human battleship was 300 meters long. The smallest alien vessel Kang had seen was twice that size. "How long do we have?" asked General Song Mira. "They were moving at about half-light speed when I left," Kang replied. "If they maintain that pace, they'll reach Earth orbit in 6 days. 6 days to prepare for the end of the world." That night, Captain Kang Do-yun stood at the observation deck of Luna Base and looked out at Earth. The blue marble hung in space like a jewel, peaceful and beautiful. In 6 days, it might be nothing but a dead rock. He thought about his wife and children waiting for him in New Seoul. He thought about the 3,000 people who had died at Ganymede Station. He thought about the alien fleet coming toward them with weapons that could erase cities. For the first time in his life, Kang truly understood what it meant to be afraid. But underneath the fear, something else was growing. Something the Valoran Empire had never encountered before, because no species had ever possessed it when facing them. Anger. The humans were about to surprise everyone, including themselves. The emergency session of Earth's United Defense Council had been going for 18 hours straight. Coffee cups and data tablets littered the conference table as humanity's leaders tried to figure out how to survive the next week. Admiral Park Jin-young rubbed his tired eyes and looked around the room. Representatives from every major nation and corporation sat together, their usual political differences forgotten in the face of extinction. It was probably the first time in human history that everyone agreed on something. They were completely screwed. "Let's go over this one more time," Park said. "Captain Kang's report shows at least 3,000 enemy vessels. Our entire fleet consists of 200 ships, most of which are patrol boats and customs cutters. Anyone have any brilliant ideas?" Director Kim Woo-sok from the Corporate Defense Initiative leaned forward. Our shipyards are working around the clock, but we can't build significant numbers of new ships in 6 days. We have maybe 40 vessels that could actually fight a real battle. And how long would those last? Asked President Chen from the Pacific Federation. Against that fleet. Maybe an hour if we're lucky. The room fell silent again. It was always the same conclusion. No matter how they ran the numbers, humanity lost. The aliens had overwhelming technological superiority and numerical advantage. Earth's best strategists couldn't find a single scenario where humans won a direct confrontation. Ambassador Lee Soman had been quiet throughout most of the meeting. She was head of the diplomatic corps and humanity's leading expert on first contact protocols. Now she cleared her throat and spoke up. "Maybe we don't need to win a military victory," she said. "Every successful civilization must have some form of diplomacy. Perhaps we can negotiate?" "Negotiate what?" snorted General Martinez from the American Continental Alliance. "We have nothing they could possibly want." "We have our surrender," Lee replied quietly. "That might be enough." It was a bitter pill to swallow, but Lee was right. If these aliens wanted to conquer rather than exterminate, there might be a way to save human lives. It wouldn't be freedom, but it would be survival. Admiral Park made the decision. "Ambassador Lee, you have authority to open communications with the alien fleet. Find out what they want." The first transmission went out 12 hours later. Lee had spent that time working with linguists and computer experts to create a basic mathematical communication protocol. If the aliens were interested in talking, they would respond to universal concepts like prime numbers and physical constants. The response came faster than anyone expected. "Greetings, humans," the message began. The translation software had done its job. The alien words were converted into clear, emotionless text. "I am Supreme Commander Thex Vara of the Valoran Empire. Your primitive communication attempts have been analyzed and understood." Lee felt a chill run down her spine. Primitive communication attempts. The aliens had decoded their most sophisticated mathematical language like it was a children's puzzle. The message continued. "You will surrender unconditionally within 72 hours. Your species will be incorporated into the Valoran Empire as a vassal state. You will provide tribute in the form of resources and labor. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your governments will be replaced by Valoran administrators. Compliance will ensure the survival of your population. Resistance will result in total annihilation. Any questions regarding these terms may be directed to your local Valoran representative upon our arrival. This transmission ends." The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Some demanded immediate preparation for war. Others insisted that surrender was the only rational choice. A few suggested trying to evacuate as many people as possible to the outer colonies. Ambassador Lee read the message again, looking for any hint of flexibility. The terms were brutally simple. Become slaves or die. There was no third option offered. They've done this before, she realized. This isn't a negotiation. It's a standard ultimatum they probably send to every species they encounter. "So what do we tell them?" Admiral Park asked. Lee looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. She saw fear, anger, desperation, and something else. Something that had been growing stronger ever since Captain Kang's report. It was the same look she had seen in her grandfather's eyes when he told stories about the old wars on Earth, when people had to choose between freedom and safety. "We tell them no," she said quietly. The room went dead silent. "Ambassador," President Chen said carefully, "perhaps you should reconsider. They're offering to let us live. Are they? Lee stood up and activated the wall display, showing images from Captain Kang's scanner records. Look at these ships. Look at their formation. This is a civilization that has perfected conquest. They've probably done this thousands of times before. She switched to an analysis prepared by the intelligence services. Their message mentioned local Valoran representatives. That means they plan to occupy our worlds permanently. They talked about replacing our governments and disbanding our military. This isn't temporary occupation. It's permanent absorption. So what? General Martinez asked. Dead is still worse than enslaved? Is it? Lee challenged. What kind of life would our children have under their rule? What happens to human culture, human dreams, human potential? They're not offering to let us live. They're offering to let us exist. The debate raged for hours. Every argument had been made before in different words. Some wanted to fight and die free. Others wanted to surrender and live as slaves. A few still hoped for some miracle that would save them. Finally, Admiral Park called for silence. We need to make a decision. The 72-hour deadline is approaching. The vote was closer than anyone expected. When it was over, the decision had been made by a margin of just 3 votes. Ambassador Lee composed the response herself. It was short and simple. To Supreme Commander Thex Vara of the Valoran Empire, we have received and considered your terms. The United Earth Defense Council respectfully declines your offer. We choose to remain free. She hesitated for just a moment, before adding one final line, humanity does not kneel. The transmission went out on all frequencies, broadcast to the approaching alien fleet and every human settlement in the system. Within minutes, it was being repeated on emergency channels throughout human space. On the bridge of the Dominator, Supreme Commander Thex Vara read the human response 3 times before showing it to her staff. Her intelligence officers ran it through translation protocols to make sure they understood correctly. They said no, her second-in-command reported, as if he couldn't quite believe it himself. Thex Vara stared at the message. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever simply refused their terms. There had been desperate last-minute attacks, futile attempts at negotiation, even cases where governments tried to secretly surrender while their militaries fought on. But no one had ever just said no. Perhaps it's a translation error, suggested her communications officer. No, Thex Vara said slowly. They understand perfectly. They're choosing death over submission. For the first time in her long military career, the Supreme Commander felt something she had never experienced before: uncertainty. Every protocol, every strategy, every contingency plan was based on the assumption that intelligent species wanted to survive. What did you do with people? Who would rather die than surrender? She was about to find out. Supreme Commander Thex Vara had never encountered a species that refused her terms, but she was nothing if not adaptable. If the humans needed a demonstration of Valoran power, she would give them one they would never forget. Target the asteroid. Mining stations, she ordered. We'll start with the smallest installations and work our way up. Once they see what happens to those who resist, they'll come to their senses. Her tactical officer brought up a holographic display of the outer system. Red markers indicated 17 human mining operations scattered throughout the asteroid belt. Most were small affairs, a few hundred workers extracting metals and rare elements from the floating rocks. Begin with Mining Station Hisan, Thex Vara commanded. Minimal resistance expected. Standard demonstration protocol. 3 Valoran destroyers broke off from the main fleet and accelerated toward the asteroid belt. Each ship was larger than anything in the human fleet, armed with weapons that could punch through planetary shields. Against a mining station, they were massive overkill. At Mining Station Heesan, Administrator Cho Minji was having her morning coffee when the proximity alarm started screaming. She rushed to the command center where her small crew was staring at scanner displays in disbelief. 3. "Ships incoming," reported Chief Engineer Bae Dong-hyun. "They're huge, Minji. Bigger than anything we've ever seen." Cho looked at the tactical display and felt her stomach drop. Each alien vessel was over a kilometer long, bristling with weapon ports. Her station had exactly 2 mining lasers and a handful of cargo shuttles. It wasn't even a fair fight. It was execution. "Open a channel to all stations," she ordered. "This is Administrator Cho Minji of Mining Station Heesan. We are under attack by alien forces. If anyone can hear this, warn Earth. Tell them we—" The transmission cut off as Valoran jamming fields activated. The mining station was now completely isolated, cut off from the rest of human space. "Incoming transmission from the alien ships," her communications officer reported. Cho nodded. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical. "Human mining facility, you are in violation of Valoran Imperial Decree. Surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. You have 5 minutes to comply." Cho looked around at her crew. 43 miners, engineers, and technicians who had signed up to dig rocks out of asteroids. None of them had expected to face the end of the world when they woke up this morning. "What do we do?" asked Dr. Kim Sang-woo, the station medic. Cho thought about the message that had gone out from Earth 12 hours ago. Humanity does not kneel. She thought about her daughter studying at university on Mars. She thought about her parents who had fled corporate tyranny on Earth to find freedom. "In the outer colonies, we follow Earth's lead," she said finally. "Open a channel to the alien ships." When the connection was established, Cho took a deep breath and spoke clearly into the microphone. "This is Administrator Cho Minji. We have received your demand for surrender. Our answer is no. This station remains under human control." The response came immediately. "You have chosen termination. Goodbye." The first Valoran energy beam struck the station's main habitat module. The blast vaporized a section of the structure, creating a hull breach that sucked 6 people into space before emergency bulkheads could seal. The second beam destroyed the power plant, plunging half the station into darkness. "All hands to emergency stations!" Cho shouted over the alarm klaxons. "Damage control teams to sections 4 and 7. It was hopeless, and everyone knew it. The alien ships were systematically dismantling the station piece by piece. But the miners didn't panic. Instead, they did something that would have amazed their attackers if the Valorans had bothered to monitor human communications. They started fighting back. Chief Engineer Bae Dong-hyun rerouted power from the mining lasers and turned them into weapons. The beams were designed to cut through solid rock. They might actually damage an alien ship if they could get a clear shot. Mining foreman Park Ji-hoon led a team to the cargo bays and began loading the freight shuttles with raw ore. If they were going to die, they'd take some aliens with them. The shuttles weren't armed, but a ship moving at high speed was still a kinetic weapon. Dr. Kim Sang-woo set up a field hospital in the deepest part of the station and prepared to treat casualties. He had no illusions about survival, but wounded people still deserved medical care. Throughout the station, similar scenes played out. People who had never seen combat in their lives suddenly became warriors. They used mining charges as improvised, explosives, They turned construction mechs into combat suits. They took every tool and piece of equipment on the station and found ways to weaponize it. The Valoran ships were expecting quick surrender followed by easy occupation. Instead, they found themselves under attack by mining lasers and cargo shuttles, loaded with explosive ore. The human weapons couldn't seriously damage their ships, but they were annoying enough to require a response. "Humans are firing on us," the Valoran squadron commander reported to the Dominator. "Primitive weapons, no real threat, but they refused to stop." Supreme Commander Thexavara felt a growing sense of unease. This wasn't how conquests were supposed to work. The humans should have surrendered after the first shot. Instead, they were escalating. "Terminate the station," she ordered. "Complete destruction. Leave no survivors." The Valoran ships concentrated their fire on mining station Hyasan. The ancient asteroid that housed the facility began to break apart under the bombardment. Atmosphere vented into space in frozen clouds. Hull sections separated and tumbled away into the void. In the station's command center, Administrator Cho Minji watched her life's work being destroyed around her. Half her people were already dead. The other half would be dead in minutes when the remaining hull sections lost integrity. She activated the emergency broadcast system one last time. Even though the Valorans were jamming communications, she knew the message would get through eventually. Someone would hear it. "This is mining. Station Hisan," she said calmly as explosions echoed through the corridors. "We are under attack by alien forces. We have fought with everything we have. We regret that we cannot do more." She paused as another impact shook the station. Through the observation windows, she could see the Valoran ships closing in for the final bombardment. "Tell Earth that we kept faith. Tell them that when it mattered, humanity stood up. We die free." The transmission ended when the command center ceased to exist. The destruction of mining station Hyasan took 47 minutes from first contact to final explosion. It should have been a quick demonstration of Valoran power followed by human submission. Instead, it became something the Valoran Empire had never experienced before. A 47-minute battle against an enemy that refused to surrender. Word of the station's last stand spread through human space like wildfire. The jamming had blocked real-time communications, but automated relay buoys carried fragments of the battle to other installations. By the time the Valoran ships moved on to their next target, every human in the system knew what had happened at Hyasan, and instead of being terrified into submission, they were inspired to resist. At mining station Kimpo, Administrator Lee Jae-hyun began preparing improvised weapons. At the series industrial complex, Chief Engineer Song Hyun-woo started, rigging the fusion reactors for overload. Throughout the asteroid belt, human installations that had been peaceful mining operations just days ago transformed into armed fortresses. On the bridge of the Dominator, Supreme Commander Thexavara stared at intelligence reports that made no sense. Human resistance was increasing rather than decreasing. The destruction of one installation had somehow made the others more determined to fight. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach," suggested her second-in-command. "The humans are not responding to standard psychological warfare techniques." Thexavara turned to study the tactical display. Red markers showed human installations throughout the system, each one now broadcasting defiant messages instead of surrender offers. For 300 years, the Valoran Empire had conquered through intimidation and overwhelming force. It had always worked before. But these humans were different. They weren't responding to fear the way every other species had. Instead, they seemed to be getting stronger the more pressure was applied. For the first time in her career, Supreme Commander Thex Vara began to wonder if the Valoran Empire had finally met its match. The Luna shipyard had never seen activity like this. Construction crews worked around the clock in 3 shifts, their welding torches creating constellations of sparks against the black of space. Every available engineer, technician, and construction worker had volunteered for the most important project in human history. Admiral Park Jin-young stood in the observation deck watching the final assembly of humanity's last hope. The UES Indomitable hung in the shipyard's main dock, bristling with experimental technology that had never been tested in combat. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Sleek lines marred by weapon ports, elegant curves interrupted by armor plating. "She's ready, Admiral," reported Chief Designer Kang Soo-young. "All systems are online and crews are standing by." Park nodded but didn't take his eyes off the ship. 15 years of secret development had gone into the Indomitable. The project had started as an exploration vessel designed for long-range missions beyond human space. Now it would serve as Earth's first and possibly last line of defense against an alien empire. "What makes her special?" asked Captain Yoon Tae-ho, who had arrived that morning to take command of the ship. Kang smiled despite the grim circumstances. "Everything. The quantum drive system allows for unpredictable movement patterns. We can basically teleport short distances during combat. The adaptive armor changes its molecular structure based on incoming weapons. The AI systems are 3 generations ahead of anything else in the fleet." "Weapons?" Yoon asked. "Experimental particle beams, gravitational pulse cannons, and something we call quantum torpedoes that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Kang's expression grew serious. "Captain, this ship represents 20 years of advancement compressed into one vessel. In theory, it should be able to fight 3 or 4 Valoran ships at once." "In theory," Yoon repeated. "What about in practice?" "We're about to find out." The Indomitable's crew was as unique as the ship itself. Navigator Kim Hyejin had served on deep space exploration missions, where split-second decisions meant the difference between discovery and disaster. Engineer Bae Sung-min had designed the quantum drive system himself and knew every circuit and power coupling. Weapons Officer Ryu Jae-won had trained on simulation systems that pushed human reflexes to their absolute limits. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Han Na-young completed the senior staff. She had volunteered for the mission even though her family lived on Mars, or perhaps because of it. Her expertise in alien physiology would be crucial if they encountered Valoran survivors. As the crew assembled on the bridge for the first time, Captain Yoon looked around at the faces of his officers. They were the best humanity had to offer, but they were still just 5 people against an empire of thousands of worlds. "I won't lie to you," he said. "Our chances of survival are minimal. Our chances of victory are effectively 0. But our mission isn't really about winning. It's about buying time for Earth's children to escape to the outer colonies. It's about showing the galaxy that humans don't surrender, even when we should." Engineer Bae raised his hand. "Captain, with respect, I disagree about our chances. This ship is something new. We have advantages the Velerans don't expect." "Such as?" "Unpredictability," Navigator Kim answered. "Every species they've conquered so far has used conventional tactics, linear thinking. We're human. We specialize in chaos." Weapons Officer Ryu nodded. "The Valorans have overwhelming technological superiority, but they've never faced anyone who fights back. They're used to easy victories. We're going to give them the hardest fight of their lives." Captain Yoon felt something stir in his chest. Hope was dangerous in a situation like this, but his crew's confidence was infectious. Maybe they couldn't win, but they could certainly make the aliens regret attacking humanity. The Indomitable launched from Luna Shipyard 12 hours later, just as reports came in of more attacks throughout the system. The Valorans had destroyed 6 more mining stations, each one fighting to the last person. But something strange was happening. The alien advance had slowed. "They're taking casualties," Admiral Park reported over the communications link. "Not many, but more than they expected. Our mining stations are putting up fierce resistance, and it's costing them time and resources." Captain Yoon reviewed the tactical data as his ship accelerated toward the outer system. The Valoran fleet was still overwhelmingly powerful, but cracks were beginning to show. Individual ships were reporting damage. Attack schedules were behind projections. For the first time, the alien commanders seemed uncertain. "Where do we hit them first?" asked Weapons Officer Ryu. "Wherever we can do the most damage," Yoon replied. "Hyejin, plot an intercept course for their advanced scouts. We'll start with the ships that are isolated from the main fleet." The Indomitable's quantum drive engaged with a sound like reality tearing. One moment they were near Earth orbit. The next they materialized behind a squadron of Valoran destroyers that were approaching the industrial stations around Jupiter. "Surprise," muttered Engineer Bay as he charged the weapon systems. The first. The Valorans knew of the Indomitable's presence was when their shields started failing under particle beam fire. The human ship had appeared from nowhere, already shooting, already moving to a new position before their targeting systems could lock on. "Unknown human vessel," came the transmission from the lead Valoran ship. "You will surrender immediately, or be destroyed." Captain Yoon activated the communications system. "This is Captain Yoon Taeho of the UES Indomitable. You are in human space without permission. Leave now or be destroyed." The response was immediate. 3 Valoran destroyers opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams that could level. Cities converged on the space where the Indomitable had been, but the human ship was no longer there. The quantum drive allowed for short-range teleportation that followed no predictable pattern. The Indomitable appeared above the Valoran formation, fired a salvo of quantum torpedoes, then vanished again before the aliens could respond. One of the Valoran destroyers exploded in a ball of exotic energy as the quantum torpedoes tore through dimensions to reach their target. The other 2 ships tried to compensate, but they were fighting an enemy that didn't follow the normal rules of space combat. "Their weapons are powerful," reported Navigator Kim as she plotted another jump. "But they're designed for conventional warfare. They can't target what they can't predict." The battle continued for 20 minutes, with the Indomitable appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Each time it materialized, Valoran ships took damage. Each time they tried to respond, the human ship was already gone. When it was over, 2 Valoran destroyers were dead, and the third was retreating with heavy damage. The Indomitable had taken only minor hits to its adaptive armor. "Well," said Captain Yoon as he watched the surviving alien ship flee toward the main fleet. "That went better than expected, but their small victory had consequences." Supreme Commander Thexavara received the battle report with growing alarm. A single human ship had destroyed 2 of her destroyers and damaged a third. The human vessel had displayed technology she had never seen before. Instantaneous movement, multi-dimensional weapons, armor that adapted to incoming fire. "Analysis," she demanded. "The human ship appears to be using experimental technology," her science officer reported. "Quantum manipulation, adaptive materials, AI-assisted targeting systems. Their technological level is much higher than initial scans indicated." Thexavara studied the tactical recordings of the battle. The human ship moved like nothing she had ever seen, attacking from impossible angles and disappearing before retaliation. Was possible. If they had more ships like this one? "How many vessels of this type do the humans possess?" she asked. "Unknown, Supreme Commander. Intelligence suggests this may be a prototype or unique vessel." "Find out," Thexvara ordered, "and increase fleet readiness to maximum. We may have underestimated these humans." As the Indomitable prepared for its next engagement, Captain Yoon reviewed damage reports and tactical assessments. They had won their first battle, but the war was far from over. The Velaran main fleet still outnumbered them thousands to one. But for the first time since this crisis began, Yoon allowed himself to believe they might actually have a chance. Not to win, that was still impossible, but to make the aliens pay. Such a price for their conquest that they would think twice before attacking another peaceful species. And sometimes, that was victory enough. The Battle of Europa began at Oro 347 ship time, when the Valoran main fleet finally reached the inner solar system. Supreme Commander Thexvara had learned from the earlier encounters. This time, she brought overwhelming force to crush human resistance. Once and for all, Admiral Park Jin-young watched the enemy approach from the command center on Luna Base. His tactical display showed a wall of red markers stretching across space. Over 2,000 Valoran warships advancing in perfect formation. Against them, humanity could field barely 150 vessels, most of which were converted civilian craft armed with mining lasers and improvised weapons. "All ships, this is Admiral Park," he broadcast to the human fleet. "Today we make our stand. We're outnumbered 20 to 1. Our ships are smaller, our weapons weaker, our armor thinner. By every reasonable calculation, we should lose this battle in under an hour." He paused, looking out at the blue marble of Earth hanging in the darkness. "But we have something they don't understand. We're fighting for our homes, our families, our future. Every ship that doesn't come back today buys time for our children to escape to the outer colonies. Every minute we hold them here is another chance for human civilization to survive." Throughout the solar system, human ships acknowledged the transmission and began moving into position. They didn't form the neat battle lines favored by most space navies. Instead, they scattered like seeds on the wind, using asteroids, gas giant, gravity wells, and orbital platforms to create an intricate web of defensive positions. Captain Yoon Tai-ho positioned the Indomitable near Europa's ice fields, where the frozen moon's magnetic signature would mask their quantum drive's energy. Emissions. Around him, his crew made final preparations for battle. "Quantum torpedoes armed and ready," reported Weapons Officer Ryu Jae-won. "Adaptive armor at maximum efficiency," added Engineer Bae Sung-min. "All systems nominal," confirmed Navigator Kim. Hyojin Dr. Han Na-young looked up from her medical console. "Sickbay is ready for casualties. I've got emergency medical supplies positioned throughout the ship." Yoon nodded to each of them. In the hours since their first victory, the crew had gelled into a perfect fighting unit. They trusted each other completely, and that trust would have to carry them through the hell that was coming. The Valoran fleet reached the asteroid belt and deployed into attack formation. Their ships were magnificent and terrible, kilometers long, weapons platforms that bristled with enough firepower to sterilize planets. They moved with mechanical precision, each vessel perfectly positioned to support the others. "Human fleet, this is Supreme Commander Thexvara. The transmission came on all frequencies. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist and we will make examples of your worlds that will echo across the galaxy." Admiral Park's response was broadcast simultaneously from every human ship. Valoran Fleet, this is Admiral Park Jin-young of the Earth Defense Force. You came to our home uninvited. You murdered our people. You threatened our children. Our response is simple. Get the hell out of our solar system. The first shots came from the human side. A group of converted mining ships hiding in the asteroid belt opened fire with improvised railguns, hurling chunks of iron and nickel at the Valoran formation at significant fractions of light speed. The projectiles were primitive compared to alien energy weapons, but they were fast and hard to track. Several Valoran ships took damage before their point defense systems could adapt. It wasn't serious damage, but it sent a clear message. The humans weren't going to roll over and die quietly. The alien response was swift and brutal. Energy beams lanced out from the Valoran fleet, vaporizing asteroids and human ships alike. The space around Jupiter became a light show of destruction as hundreds of weapons fired simultaneously. But the humans weren't fighting a conventional battle. They used tactics learned from centuries of warfare on Earth: guerrilla strikes, hit-and-run attacks, and asymmetric warfare that played to their strengths rather than the enemy's. Captain Yoon led the Indomitable in a series of quantum jumps that brought them behind isolated Valoran ships. Each time they appeared, they fired everything they had, then jumped away before the aliens could respond effectively. The larger Valoran vessels couldn't match their mobility, and the alien formation began to spread out as ships tried to counter. The unpredictable attacks. They're adapting faster than we hoped, Navigator Kim reported as she tracked enemy movements. They're learning to anticipate our jump patterns. Then we change patterns, Yoon replied. Bay, can you randomize the quantum drive intervals? Already working on it, the engineer called back. Give me 30 seconds. Those 30 seconds nearly cost them the ship. A Valoran battlecruiser managed to target their position and opened fire with a barrage that lit up space. The Indomitable's adaptive armor held, but barely. Armor integrity down to 60%, Dr. Han reported from her damage control station. Jump drive ready, Bay announced. The Indomitable vanished just as another volley arrived to destroy empty space. They reappeared near a cluster of human ships that were making a desperate stand against overwhelming odds. The cargo vessel Sol Pride was firing its improvised weapons at a Valoran destroyer, while 3 alien fighters strafed its hull. Captain Park Sunmi, the ship's commander, had refused to evacuate the civilian passengers in her cargo hold. Instead, she was using her ship to shield an escape convoy of refugee vessels. Sol Pride, this is the Indomitable, Yoon transmitted. We're coming to assist. Negative, Indomitable, came the reply. We're finished. Use your fancy drive to hit the big ships. Don't waste time on us. But Yoon was already moving. The Indomitable materialized between the Sol Pride and the attacking Valoran ships, its quantum torpedoes tearing into the alien fighters. The destroyer turned its weapons on the new threat, but Yoon was ready for that. Now, Ryu, he called. The weapons officer fired everything they had directly into the destroyer's main gun ports. The particle beams and gravitational pulses tore through the alien ship's hull, causing secondary explosions that broke the vessel in half. Sol Pride, get your people out of here, Yoon transmitted. We'll cover your retreat. As the refugee convoy escaped toward the outer system, the Indomitable continued its deadly dance through the battlefield. They saved 2 more human vessels and destroyed or damaged a dozen Valoran ships. But it was becoming clear that heroic actions by individual ships wouldn't be enough. The human fleet was being systematically destroyed. For every alien ship they damaged, They lost 3 of their own. The mathematics of the battle were inexorable. Humanity simply didn't have enough firepower to stop the Valoran advance. "Admiral Park to all ships," came the transmission from Luna Base. "Begin fall back to Earth orbit. Repeat, all ships fall back to Earth orbit. We're implementing Plan Omega." Plan Omega was the last resort, a fighting retreat to Earth's orbital defenses, followed by a final stand around humanity's homeworld. It meant abandoning the outer system to alien occupation, but it would buy time for the civilian evacuation. Fleets. As the surviving human ships began their withdrawal, Captain Yoon made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life, however long that might be. "Hyejin, plot a course for Earth," he ordered. "Best possible speed." "Sir," Weapons Officer Ryu protested, "there are still human ships out there. We could save more of them." Yoon looked at his tactical display, where red markers showed Valoran ships overwhelming the scattered human forces. Every instinct told him to stay and fight, to save every ship and life he could. But he had a larger responsibility. "Our job isn't to win every battle," he said quietly. "Our job is to make sure humanity survives. The Indomitable is the most advanced ship we have. Earth's going to need us for the final defense." The quantum drive engaged, and they left the battlefield behind. As they jumped toward Earth, Yoon watched the tactical display show more and more human ships going dark. Each lost signal represented dozens of lives, hundreds of dreams ended by alien weapons. But they had accomplished something important. The Battle of Europa had lasted 4 hours. 4 times longer than Supreme Commander Thex Vara had projected. The human fleet had been destroyed, but they had taken nearly 200 Valoran ships with them. More importantly, they had bought time. Time for refugee fleets to escape toward the outer colonies. Time for Earth's defenses to prepare for the final assault. Time for the Indomitable to return home and make ready for humanity's last stand. As Earth grew larger in their view screens, Captain Yoon allowed himself one moment of pride. They had lost the battle, but they had shown the galaxy what human courage looked like. Now it was time to show them what human determination could accomplish when backed into a corner. The final battle was coming, and humanity would be ready. The Battle of Europa began at Oro 347 ship time, when the Valoran main fleet finally reached the inner solar system. Supreme Commander Thex Vara had learned from the earlier encounters. This time, she brought overwhelming force to crush human resistance. Once and for all, Admiral Park Jin-young watched the enemy approach from the command center on Luna Base. His tactical display showed a wall of red markers stretching across space. Over 2,000 Valoran warships advancing in perfect formation. Against them, humanity could field barely 150 vessels, most of which were converted civilian craft armed with mining lasers and improvised weapons. "All ships, this is Admiral Park," he broadcast to the human fleet. "Today we make our stand. We're outnumbered 20 to 1. Our ships are smaller, our weapons weaker, our armor thinner. By every reasonable calculation, we should lose this battle in under an hour." He paused, looking out at the blue marble of Earth hanging in the darkness. "But we have something they don't understand. We're fighting for our homes, our families, our future. Every ship that doesn't come back today buys time for our children to escape to the outer colonies. Every minute we hold them here is another chance for human civilization to survive." Throughout the solar system, human ships acknowledged the transmission and began moving into position. They didn't form the neat battle lines favored by most space navies. Instead, they scattered like seeds on the wind, using asteroids, gas giant, gravity wells, and orbital platforms to create an intricate web of defensive positions. Captain Yoon Tai-ho positioned the Indomitable near Europa's ice fields, where the frozen moon's magnetic signature would mask their quantum drive's energy. Emissions. Around him, his crew made final preparations for battle. "Quantum torpedoes armed and ready," reported Weapons Officer Ryu Jae-won. "Adaptive armor at maximum efficiency," added Engineer Bae Sung-min. "All systems nominal," confirmed Navigator Kim. Hyojin Dr. Han Na-young looked up from her medical console. "Sickbay is ready for casualties. I've got emergency medical supplies positioned throughout the ship." Yoon nodded to each of them. In the hours since their first victory, the crew had gelled into a perfect fighting unit. They trusted each other completely, and that trust would have to carry them through the hell that was coming. The Valoran fleet reached the asteroid belt and deployed into attack formation. Their ships were magnificent and terrible, kilometers long, weapons platforms that bristled with enough firepower to sterilize planets. They moved with mechanical precision, each vessel perfectly positioned to support the others. "Human fleet, this is Supreme Commander Thex Vara. The transmission came on all frequencies. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist and we will make examples of your worlds that will echo across the galaxy." Admiral Park's response was broadcast simultaneously from every human ship. "Valoran Fleet, this is Admiral Park Jin-young of the Earth Defense Force. You came to our home uninvited. You murdered our people. You threatened our children. Our response is simple. Get the hell out of our solar system." The first shots came from the human side. A group of converted mining ships hiding in the asteroid belt opened fire with improvised railguns, hurling chunks of iron and nickel at the Valoran formation at significant fractions of light speed. The projectiles were primitive compared to alien energy weapons, but they were fast and hard to track. Several Valoran ships took damage before their point defense systems could adapt. It wasn't serious damage, but it sent a clear message. The humans weren't going to roll over and die quietly. The alien response was swift and brutal. Energy beams lanced out from the Valoran fleet, vaporizing asteroids and human ships alike. The space around Jupiter became a light show of destruction as hundreds of weapons fired simultaneously. But the humans weren't fighting a conventional battle. They used tactics learned from centuries of warfare on Earth: guerrilla strikes, hit-and-run attacks, and asymmetric warfare that played to their strengths rather than the enemy's. Captain Yoon led the Indomitable in a series of quantum jumps that brought them behind isolated Valoran ships. Each time they appeared, they fired everything they had, then jumped away before the aliens could respond effectively. The larger Valoran vessels couldn't match their mobility, and the alien formation began to spread out as ships tried to counter. "The unpredictable attacks. They're adapting faster than we hoped," Navigator Kim reported as she tracked enemy movements. "They're learning to anticipate our jump patterns." "Then we change patterns," Yoon replied. "Bae, can you randomize the quantum drive intervals?" "Already working on it," the engineer called back. "Give me 30 seconds. Those 30 seconds nearly cost them the ship. A Valoran battlecruiser managed to target their position and opened fire with a barrage that lit up space. The Indomitable's adaptive armor held, but barely. "Armor integrity down to 60%, Dr. Han reported from her damage control station. "Jump drive ready," Bae announced. The Indomitable vanished just as another volley arrived to destroy empty space. They reappeared near a cluster of human ships that were making a desperate stand against overwhelming odds. The cargo vessel Sole Pride was firing its improvised weapons at a Valoran destroyer, while 3 alien fighters strafed its hull. Captain Park Sunmi, the ship's commander, had refused to evacuate the civilian passengers in her cargo hold. Instead, she was using her ship to shield an escape convoy of refugee vessels. "Sole Pride, this is the Indomitable," Yoon transmitted. "We're coming to assist." "Negative, Indomitable," came the reply. "We're finished. Use your fancy drive to hit the big ships. Don't waste time on us." But Yoon was already moving. The Indomitable materialized between the Sole Pride and the attacking Valoran ships, its quantum torpedoes tearing into the alien fighters. The destroyer turned its weapons on the new threat, but Yoon was ready for that. "Now, Ryu!" he called. The weapons officer fired everything they had directly into the destroyer's main gun ports. The particle beams and gravitational pulses tore through the alien ship's hull, causing secondary explosions that broke the vessel in half. "Sole Pride, get your people out of here," Yoon transmitted. "We'll cover your retreat." As the refugee convoy escaped toward the outer system, the Indomitable continued its deadly dance through the battlefield. They saved 2 more human vessels and destroyed or damaged a dozen Valoran ships. But it was becoming clear that heroic actions by individual ships wouldn't be enough. The human fleet was being systematically destroyed. For every alien ship they damaged, they lost 3 of their own. The mathematics of the battle were inexorable. Humanity simply didn't have enough firepower to stop the Valoran advance. "Admiral Park to all ships," came the transmission from Luna Base. "Begin fall back to Earth orbit. Repeat, all ships fall back to Earth orbit. We're implementing Plan Omega." Plan Omega was the last resort, a fighting retreat to Earth's orbital defenses, followed by a final stand around humanity's homeworld. It meant abandoning the outer system to alien occupation, but it would buy time for the civilian evacuation. Fleets. As the surviving human ships began their withdrawal, Captain Yoon made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life, however long that might be. "Hyejin, plot a course for Earth," he ordered. "Best possible speed." "Sir," Weapons Officer Ryu protested, "there are still human ships out there. We could save more of them." Yoon looked at his tactical display, where red markers showed Valoran ships overwhelming the scattered human forces. Every instinct told him to stay and fight, to save every ship and life he could. But he had a larger responsibility. "Our job isn't to win every battle," he said quietly. "Our job is to make sure humanity survives. The Indomitable is the most advanced ship we have. Earth's going to need us for the final defense." The quantum drive engaged, and they left the battlefield behind. As they jumped toward Earth, Yoon watched the tactical display show more and more human ships going dark. Each lost signal represented dozens of lives, hundreds of dreams ended by alien weapons. But they had accomplished something important. The Battle of Europa had lasted 4 hours, 4 times longer than Supreme Commander Thex Vara had projected. The human fleet had been destroyed, but they had taken nearly 200 Valoran ships with them. More importantly, they had bought time. Time for refugee fleets to escape toward the outer colonies. Time for Earth's defenses to prepare for the final assault. Time for the Indomitable to return home and make ready for humanity's last stand. As Earth grew larger in their view screens, Captain Yoon allowed himself one moment of pride. They had lost the battle, but they had shown the galaxy what human courage looked like. Now it was time to show them what human determination could accomplish when backed into a corner. The final. Battle was coming, and humanity would be ready. Earth had never looked more beautiful or more fragile. Captain Yoon Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched his homeworld turn slowly beneath them. The blue oceans, white clouds, and green continents seemed impossibly precious, now that he was seeing them for the last time. Somewhere down there, in the sprawling cities and quiet countryside, 3 billion human beings waited to learn their fate. Quantum core overload at 60%, Engineer Bae Sung-min reported from his station. His voice was steady, but sweat beaded on his forehead as he monitored the dangerous energies building in the ship's heart. We have maybe 8 minutes before the reaction becomes irreversible. Velaran Fleet is maintaining approach vector, Navigator Kim Hyojin added. They're in standard battle formation, perfect for what we're planning. The alien armada stretched across space like a steel curtain, over 1,500 ships advancing with mechanical precision toward Earth. Their weapons were already charging, preparing to rain destruction on humanity's birth world. In less than an hour, they would be in position to begin orbital bombardment unless the Indomitable stopped them. Sir, Weapons Officer Ryu Jaewon called out, incoming transmission from the Valoran flagship. Let's hear what she has to say, Yoon replied. Supreme Commander Thexavara's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the bridge of the Dominator hummed with activity as her crew prepared for the final assault. Captain Yoon, she began. My sensors indicate massive energy buildups aboard your vessel. I assume you are preparing some form of suicide attack. I will give you one final opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your crew will be treated as prisoners of war rather than terrorists. Yoon almost laughed. Even now, facing the complete destruction of her fleet, the Valoran commander still believed that humans would choose life over freedom. Commander Thexavara, he replied, you still don't understand us at all. You think this is about dying. It's not. It's about making sure our children have a future worth living in. Your children will serve the Valoran Empire, Thexavara stated. They will live, work, and prosper under our guidance. That is better than the extinction you are choosing. No, Yoon said quietly. It's not. You see, Commander, you made one crucial mistake when you decided to conquer humanity. You assumed we were like every other species you've encountered. You thought we would calculate the odds, weigh the benefits, and make the logical choice. He stepped closer to the camera, his eyes hard as steel. But humans don't make logical choices when our families are threatened. We make human choices, and the human choice is always the same. We'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees. Doctor. Han Na-young looked up from her station. Captain, Admiral Park is requesting a final communication. Put him through. Admiral Park Jin-young's weathered face appeared on a secondary screen. Behind him, the command center at Luna Base was a hive of frantic activity as Earth's remaining defenders prepared for battle. Captain Yoon, the Admiral said. The civilian. Evacuation is complete. The last refugee ships cleared the system 20 minutes ago. Whatever happens here, humanity will survive. Thank you, sir, Yoon replied. That's all we ever wanted. The orbital defenses are standing by, Park continued. As soon as you create your opening, we'll hit them with everything we have. Make it count. We will, sir. Indomitable out. The transmission ended, and Yoon turned to his crew. These 5 people had become his family over the past week. They had fought together, bled together, and now they would die together. But their sacrifice would save billions of lives and preserve human freedom for future generations. Final systems check, he ordered. Quantum core overload at 80%, Bay reported. 5 minutes to critical mass. Navigation systems optimal, Kim added. We're locked onto the center of their formation. All weapons charged and ready, Ryu confirmed. We'll give them everything we have before the core goes. Medical bay secured, Dr. Han announced. All emergency systems are on automatic. Yoon nodded to each of them. It's been an honor serving with you all. When they write the history of this war, they'll remember that humanity's finest hour came when everything seemed hopeless. The Indomitable began its final approach toward the Valoran fleet. The quantum drive had been modified for one last jump. Instead of teleporting to safety, it would carry them directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Quantum core at 90%, Bay announced. 2 minutes to critical mass. On the Valoran flagship, alarms began sounding as sensors detected the impossible energy readings from the approaching human ship. Supreme Commander, the Science officer reported, the human vessel is generating quantum fluctuations beyond anything in our database. If those energies are released, all ships, emergency scatter, Thexvara commanded. Maximum acceleration, all vectors. But it was too late. The Valoran fleet had been designed for overwhelming firepower, not for rapid maneuvering. The massive ships began to change course, but their momentum carried them forward toward Earth and toward the Indomitable. Quantum jump in 10 seconds, Navigator Kim announced. Captain Yoon activated the ship's general address system one last time. All hands, this is the captain. In a few seconds, we're going to strike a blow that will echo across the galaxy. When other species hear the story of humanity's last stand, they'll know that freedom is worth any price. He paused, thinking of his wife and children waiting for him in the outer colonies. Tell them we were human. Tell them we were free. Tell them we went down fighting. Quantum jump initiated, Kim reported. Core critical mass in 30 seconds, Bay added. The Indomitable vanished from its position near Earth and reappeared in the exact center of the Valoran battle formation. Alien ships stretched out in all directions, their weapons turning desperately toward the human vessel that had materialized among them. All weapons! Maximum rate of fire! Yoon commanded. The Indomitable unleashed everything it had. Particle beams lanced out in all directions, tearing through Valoran hulls. Quantum torpedoes detonated against alien shields, creating cascading failures that spread from ship to ship. Gravitational pulse cannons sent shockwaves through the enemy formation. The human ship was surrounded and massively outnumbered, but for those 30 seconds, it was the most dangerous thing in the solar system. Valoran ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as the Indomitable's weapons found their marks. Core breach imminent, Bay shouted over the noise of battle. 10 seconds! It's been an honor, Captain Yoon said to his crew. They stood together on the bridge, facing the end with dignity and courage. Around them, Valoran ships poured fire into the Indomitable, but the human vessel's adaptive armor held just long, enough to complete its mission. Core breach in 3, 2, 1. The quantum drive core of the Indomitable finally reached critical mass and released all its stored energy at once. The explosion didn't follow the normal laws of physics. Quantum energy existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and when it was released uncontrolled, reality itself twisted and buckled. The gravimetric distortion expanded outward from the human ship like a bubble of twisted space-time. Every Valoran vessel caught in its embrace was torn apart as the fundamental forces that held matter together simply stopped working. Molecular bonds failed. Atomic structures collapsed. Energy became matter, and matter became energy in an impossible dance of destruction. 63 Velaran warships died in that instant, including 3 of their largest battleships. Another 40 ships were damaged beyond repair, their hulls cracked and their systems failing. The perfect formation of the alien fleet dissolved into chaos as surviving ships tumbled through space, their crews struggling to regain control. The Indomitable and its crew vanished in the quantum fire, but their sacrifice had achieved the impossible. The Velaran fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just minutes before, was suddenly vulnerable. On Luna Base, Admiral Park watched the tactical display in amazement. The center of the alien formation had simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding sphere of quantum distortion that was tearing holes in space itself. "All batteries, open fire!" he commanded. "Target the damaged ships! Don't let their sacrifice be in vain!" Earth's orbital defense platforms opened up with everything they had. Railgun batteries hurled projectiles at relativistic speeds into the scattered Valoran ships. Missile swarms emerged from hidden launchers throughout the system. Energy weapons that had been charging for hours finally released their stored power. The Battle of Earth had begun, and for the first time since the war started, humanity had a chance to win. But the price of that chance had been the finest ship and crew in the human fleet. Captain Yunteho and the crew of the Indomitable had given their lives to prove that some things were more important than survival. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. The quantum explosion that consumed the Indomitable lit up the solar system like a new star. For 30 seconds, the twisted energies of collapsed space-time burned brighter than the sun, visible from every world in human space. When the light finally faded, the course of galactic history had changed forever. Supreme Commander Thex Vara stood on the bridge of the Dominator, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. Her perfect formation was gone. The center of her fleet had been completely destroyed, with scattered ships tumbling through space like broken toys. In 300 years of conquest, the Valoran Empire had never suffered losses like this. "Damage report," she commanded, her voice tight with controlled fury. 63 ships destroyed, 41 damaged beyond combat effectiveness, her tactical officer replied. "The quantum distortion is still interfering with our sensors and communications. Many ships are operating on emergency power only." Thexavara felt something she had never experienced before in her long military career. Doubt. She had brought 1,500 ships to crush a primitive species, and in one moment of suicidal brilliance, the humans had crippled over 100 of them. "Supreme Commander," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the surviving ships. Several captains are requesting permission to withdraw and regroup." "Denied," Thexvara snapped. "We maintain the attack. All ships reform and advance on Earth." But even as she gave the orders, she could see the hesitation in her crew's movements. For the first time in their lives, Valoran warriors were afraid. On Luna Base, Admiral Park Jin-young watched the alien fleet struggle to reorganize and felt a fierce satisfaction burn in his chest. The Indomitable's sacrifice had done more than just damage the enemy ships. It had shattered their aura of invincibility. "All defensive batteries, maintain fire," he ordered. "Target the damaged ships first. Don't give them time to recover." Earth's weapons platforms had been built over decades, hidden throughout the system and armed with the most powerful weapons humanity could create. Now they revealed themselves and opened fire with devastating effect. Railgun slugs traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through damaged Valoran hulls. Nuclear missiles detonated against weakened shields. Particle beam arrays that drew power directly from the sun carved through alien armor. The Valoran fleet found itself under attack from all directions. Weapons emerged from asteroids, space stations, and even seemingly dead moons. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, and now they were using every defensive position to make the aliens pay for every kilometer they advanced. But the Valorans were still the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Damaged ships began to return fire, their weapons still vastly superior to anything humanity possessed. Earth's defensive platforms started dying one by one as alien energy beams found their targets. The battle raged for hours, a titanic struggle between human determination and Valoran technological superiority. Ships died on both sides as the space around Earth became a graveyard of twisted metal and expanding plasma clouds. Captain Kang Do-hyun, the merchant who had first warned Earth of the alien threat, now commanded a hastily armed cargo vessel in the defensive fleet. His ship, the New Busan, had been equipped with mining lasers and missile pods salvaged from destroyed military vessels. "Target that cruiser," he ordered his makeshift crew. "The one with the damaged engines." The cargo ship's weapons were pathetic compared to real warships, but Kang had learned something important during the war. It wasn't the size of the weapon that mattered, it was the courage of the person using it. The New Busan closed with a alien cruiser, taking hits that would have vaporized the ship if its armor hadn't been reinforced with ceramic plates from asteroid mining equipment. Kang held his course until they were close enough to see the individual weapon ports on the enemy vessel. "Fire everything," he commanded. Mining lasers designed to cut through solid rock punched through the cruiser's damaged hull. The missiles weren't military grade, but they carried nuclear warheads that had been intended for deep space mining operations. The explosions tore the alien ship apart from the inside. Similar scenes played out throughout the system as human determination overcame technological disadvantage. A hospital ship rammed a Valoran destroyer. A luxury yacht armed with improvised weapons took out an alien fighter squadron. Everywhere the Valorans looked, they found humans willing to die rather than surrender. Supreme Commander Thexvara watched her fleet slowly being destroyed by an enemy that should have been helpless. Her tactical advantage was meaningless against people who treated suicide attacks as standard tactics. Her superior weapons were useless against opponents who simply refused to retreat. "Supreme Commander," her science officer reported, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human defensive network. They appear to be preparing for a coordinated strike." Thexvara studied the tactical display. The humans had been holding back their most powerful weapons, waiting for the perfect moment. Now, with her fleet scattered and damaged, they were preparing to deliver a killing blow. "All ships, emergency withdrawal," she ordered. "Maximum acceleration, retreat, beyond the system's outer boundary." For the first time in Valoran history, their fleet was retreating from a technologically inferior enemy, but it was too late for an orderly withdrawal. Admiral Park had been waiting for this moment, and now he played his final card. Operation Thunderbolt, execute now, he commanded. Throughout the solar system, massive weapons that had been building power for days finally fired. Solar collectors that had been disguised as communication satellites unleashed concentrated starlight. Fusion reactors hidden in the asteroid belt overloaded simultaneously, creating a chain reaction of explosions that caught dozens of fleeing Valoran ships. The moon itself opened like a flower, revealing railgun batteries that fired projectiles the size of buildings at the retreating alien fleet. The Valoran retreat became a rout. Ships that had survived the battle were destroyed as they tried to escape. The disciplined formation that had entered the system was replaced by scattered vessels fleeing in panic. Supreme Commander Thex Vara's flagship was among the few that escaped, its armor blackened and its hull cracked. As the Dominator limped away from Earth at maximum speed, she found herself facing a truth that shattered everything she had believed about warfare. The Valoran Empire could be defeated. 3 days later, she sat in her private quarters and composed a report that would change the course of galactic history. For the first time in 300 years, a Valoran fleet had been forced to retreat. Of the 1,500 ships that had approached Earth, fewer than 400 had escaped. But the numbers weren't the important part. What mattered was that the humans had broken something fundamental in the Valoran psyche. They had proven that the Empire's technology and numbers weren't enough against an enemy that simply refused to be conquered. Personal log, Supreme Commander. Thex Vara, she began. The human campaign has ended in strategic failure. The species designated as humanity has demonstrated military capabilities far beyond initial assessments. Recommendation: avoid further contact with human space. Classification: extreme threat to Imperial operations. She paused, staring out at the stars. Addendum: the humans possess a quality that our analysis cannot quantify. They call it the human spirit. It makes them capable of actions that violate all logical military doctrine. Any future engagement with this species should be avoided unless absolutely necessary. The report went out to every corner of the Valoran Empire, and from there to the thousands of other species that served as vassals or allies. The story of humanity's impossible victory spread like wildfire through the galaxy. On a dozen worlds, subject species began to whisper about the small blue planet where people chose death over slavery. Resistance movements that had been crushed decades ago began to stir again. The Valoran Empire had seemed unstoppable until 5 humans in a single ship proved that any enemy could be defeated. The Indomitable was gone, its crew scattered atoms in the solar wind. But their sacrifice had accomplished something no one could have imagined. They had planted the seeds of rebellion throughout the galaxy. 10 years later, Captain Kang Do-hyun stood in the Memorial Garden on Luna Base, looking up at the monument to the crew of the Indomitable. Their names were carved in black stone: Captain Yoon Tae-ho, Navigator Kim Hyejin, Engineer Bai Sung-min, Weapons Officer Ryu Jae-won, and Dr. Han Na-young. Below their names was the inscription that had become humanity's rallying cry. They stood between tyranny and freedom, and chose to burn rather than bend. Around the memorial, delegations from 100 different worlds had gathered for the annual Remembrance Day ceremony. Species that had never heard of Earth 10 years ago now sent representatives to honor the crew that had sparked the greatest revolution in galactic history. The Kentari ambassador stepped forward first, her crystalline features reflecting the memorial's eternal flame. On behalf of the Free Kentari Republic, we thank the crew of the Indomitable for showing us that freedom is possible. The Brevac representative was next, his massive form moving with